everyone, I'm Chrissy. I'm going to take you through a 30-minute yin class today. You can use a mat, but you can also use a towel or a blanket, so just make sure you're not on a hardwood floor or anything like that. Make sure that you've got lots of cosy layers on, so bed socks, dressing gowns, pyjamas, all encouraged, cosy jumpers. Blankets for the end would be really useful, and then also you're going to want some things that look like this. So this is a yoga block, but you can use hardback books or other things. They're just to kind of sit on, give you a bit of height. You can also use cushions, so I would grab about 3 to 4 cushions if you can, so just go and steal them off the sofa or the bed. And then I think that's it for all equipment you'll need today. If you begin to feel ill during any point in the class, please stop, please get some help for whatever you may need. If anything feels uncomfortable, we're going to be holding these poses for quite a long time, so it's really important that you feel like you can sustain the poses for a long time. So don't put your body in a place that you just feel like, oh, this is really uncomfortable. We want some discomfort, but not sort of any sort of sharp tingly pains. So we'll get started. So we're going to get started in Supta Baddha Konasana today. So if you have a bolster, you can use a bolster. If you don't, you can use cushions and kind of shape them the same way as the bolster. And today you can take your bolster or cushions long ways. We're going to start in Supta Baddha Konasana, how we normally start. So feet together, soles of the feet together, knees wide apart. And then you're going to drop your back over the bolster or your prop. And then maybe you want the head to kind of really dangle. Maybe you want it actually to go a little bit further so that the head can sort of just rest on the floor. If this feels too intense, you can also place another cushion or a block or a book underneath the head here. That feels a bit nicer for me. You can take the arms out to the side. Of course, you can do this without any props, so you can just lie back on the mat in Supta Baddha Konasana. And just close down the eyes here and begin to settle into the body and the breath. And if you have your arms out to the side and you're on a prop, this will probably be this can be quite deep for the shoulders. So just be aware of that. And if you start to get any pins and needles sort of pains, just bring the hands back towards the body. Maybe give yourself a nice hug. So discomfort and any sort of stretching feeling is okay, but any sort of sharp pains or any tingles, pins and needles, we want to avoid those completely. So please do come out, scale back if your body gives you those feelings. And just really starting to feel the ground underneath you and begin to feel supported by the earth. So begin to feel supported by your mat or your blanket or the floor beneath you. Become conscious of which parts of your body are touching the floor. So maybe your bum, your lower back, maybe parts of your legs, the sides of your feet, maybe the shoulders if you're not on a prop, maybe the back of the head. And we just begin to notice these things to help bring us into the present moment, to just help let go of the day. Let go of whatever's happened. And come into this moment. And you deserve this moment, you deserve to have this time just for yourself. You deserve to have this space without any of the troubles, without any of the worries that have happened during your day or yesterday, last week. So any time that your thoughts begin to travel, your mind begins to wander, just know you can always come back to the breath, to the present moment. And then when you're ready, very slowly, we're going to make our way out of our pose and come to our reset position. So the reset position, nice and easy for our first position. We could just come into, roll onto the side, onto your left side, and come into our fetal position. Maybe bringing the left hand underneath the head so that you're nice and supported. Maybe even having your bolster or your block or a pillow underneath your head too. That can feel really nice. Keeping the eyes closed here. And we're going to come into a reset pose between our poses today. And we come into a reset pose so that our body gets a chance to feel, to observe how the pose has affected the body. So sometimes when we're actually in the pose, we're focused on the discomfort, we're focused on the time of, oh, I've been in this pose a long time, when's it going to finish? So sometimes we don't actually notice what the pose is doing for the body. So we reset to let the body observe, to let ourselves observe what is happening. Take one more breath in your reset position. Then make your way up slowly towards a seated position. So we're going to come into fire log pose for our next pose. Fire log pose can be really intense, especially if we have tight hips. I've got very tight hips, so this feels very intense for me, so I like to prop it. So please do prop the pose as much as you can, or I will give you another option if you prefer to do the other option. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to bring our right shin and thigh sort of in this like squared angle thing, flexing the ankle here, and really lean onto it so that the whole knee, the whole leg is on the floor. And then we're going to place gently the left foot on top of the right knee just for a second, flexing the foot, and then we're going to open up so that the knee begins to come down towards the right foot. So keeping everything nice and flexed, so you're protecting the knees. And now I've got this nice gap here, yeah? So some people won't have a gap, some people's knees will just go straight onto that foot. But if you've got a gap, you can now use your props to prop things up. So if you're up really high, you can maybe use your block the whole way up. You can maybe use it halfway across, that can be quite nice. Even use a bolster or a cushion, that can feel quite comfortable. Just play around with it. There's no kind of set position where your prop needs to be. It's just about where's comfy for you. And if you feel comfy here, maybe you just stay sitting nice and tall. If you don't have a gap and you'd like to come forward, you can begin to bring the body forward here. If this feels still just way too intense, I want you to bring your left foot outside and you're just coming into this lovely square position instead, keeping the legs nice and flexed. We're going to be here for 2 minutes. So you've got this option here, and you can even prop underneath the knees here. So if you're still quite tight, you could maybe, I know that if people are runners or cyclists, they can be quite, stereotypically men can be quite tight here in the hips. So if you do feel like you fit, you are tight in the hips, you can always prop. There's not a limit on props, don't feel like, well, she's only got one block there and I feel like I need like 10 cushions. Use 10 cushions, use whatever you need to prop yourself up. And if you are in your fire log pose and you've got a prop, but you begin to feel the knee releasing down a little bit, you can always readjust. So in yin, we want to find some stillness in the pose and we want to commit to the pose and that stillness. But if you do need to readjust, that's okay. So you readjust and then you commit to the stillness again. So it's not about sort of always moving around and rocking back and forth the whole time. It's about, okay, I need to readjust, let me readjust, and then I'll be still. You've got less than a minute left here. If you're in your square pose and it feels comfortable, you can begin to come down, folding the body forward over the legs. find your breath again here. How does the breath feel? The breath has begun to speed up. Maybe you need to scale back. Take one more deep breath in through the nose, and let's breathe out through the mouth. Very slowly release the feet, release the legs, and come into your reset position. So maybe you want to take the legs out straight, keep the body nice and upright. Maybe you want to go into a child's pose. Maybe you just want to keep the legs crossed, sit up nice and tall. Maybe you want to roll onto your side again, lie back in Shavasana. There's no right or wrong with these reset poses, but I would really encourage you to just go where the body is telling you to go. So don't think about, okay, well, what were the ones that Chrissy told me, or what do I think I should do? It's not about that. It's just about what does the body feel like doing. Does it just feel like flopping in a certain position? That's fine. Take one more breath in your reset pose. And then very slowly we're going to come up and do the other side. So fire log on the opposite side. So this time we've got our left leg in this kind of nice square angle, really flexing that foot to protect the knee, making sure the weight is right down to the legs is completely on the floor. And then you're bringing that right foot over the top of the knee, flex the foot, and then opening the hip out to the side. Now you might feel differently on one side to the other. You might need more props, you might need less props. You can play around with your props as always, making yourself as comfortable as possible. We're going to be here for 2 minutes once more. And maybe if it doesn't feel that comfortable, crossing that right foot, popping it outside and underneath the left knee, and coming into that lovely square position, keeping the heels nice and flexed. And then maybe coming forward here. So you can come forward here if you're in your square pose, or if you're in your fire log pose. Doesn't matter, it's just about where you feel comfortable. And here I'm feeling a really good stretch across my glutes, my lower back, my hips, bit of the outer thighs. Just notice what you can notice. You've got about a minute left here, so make sure you can still sustain the pose for another minute. And we hold quite a lot of tension around this area of the body, so in the hips and the glutes and the lower back. So if you begin to feel any emotions arise, you begin to feel a little bit uncomfortable, that's okay. You can sit with that for a little bit. If it feels absolutely unbearable, just take a moment, come out of the pose, wiggle around and come back and join us when you're ready. But it can be uncomfortable sitting with ourselves, you know, we're not used to it. We're very, the society we live in is very go, go, go. We need to be busy, we need to do things all the time, you know. But someone said something really nice to me the other day. They said, we're not human doings, we're human beings. We're just meant to be. We're just meant to be here. We don't have to do anything. We're doing enough by just being here. Take one more breath wherever you are. And then come in to find your next reset pose. So remembering you've got all those choices. Lie on the back, bring the knees into the chest, rolling onto the sides. You might even fancy a downward facing dog. You might even fancy lifting the hips and just pedaling out the feet a little bit. Traditionally we wouldn't normally do this in yin, but I won't tell anyone. So you can do it if you like. Notice what you can notice. How does the body feel? Do you feel more balanced now you've done it on both sides? Is there any new sense of calmness in the body? very slowly, wherever you are, come to find a seated position. We're going to move into dragonfly. So dragonfly is a wide-legged position. Now you can do dragonfly against a wall, so if you feel like sitting like that is just going to be super uncomfortable, pop your bum against the wall and then just open your legs out into that V shape, and then you've just got a little bit more support there for your body. If you want to go a little bit further, bringing the legs into that nice V position, and don't worry, it can be a little bit closer together, it doesn't have to be right out to the side. If you're in box splits, that's amazing, you know, however you're feeling. And if you feel like you're rounding down into the hips, maybe place a cushion or a book underneath your sit bones. Make sure you can sit up nice and tall. You can stay here if this is enough, or you can begin to crawl the body forward, maybe just walking forward a little bit. Now what I love doing here is just stacking all my props and making like a little fort, a little den. And then I can just literally lean my head down, rest my head on my props. We're going to be here for 2 minutes, so make sure you are somewhere you can sustain for 2 minutes. And remember that we are looking for some discomfort in the body, so we're not, there's a difference between yin and restorative yoga. So restorative yoga, we're aiming not to feel anything, we're aiming to just feel like we're on this lovely fluffy cloud. Restorative yoga is amazing, but yin is amazing in a different way. So we're slowing down, we're focusing on the breathing, but we're also reaching deep into the fascia, that connective tissue that wraps around the muscles, and it can get quite stiff. So we hold these poses for longer, we relax the breath, we relax into the pose, and we begin to move the fascia around a little bit through relaxation, through deep breathing. So we don't want to feel absolutely nothing, but at the other end of the scale, we don't want to feel like we can't sustain the pose and that we're not breathing. So we've got about a minute left in this pose. If you have noticed that the breath has begun to get faster or has become a bit shallow, it's normally the body sign that it wants you to back off. And normally the ego takes over and says, no, I can hold it here, I know I can hold it here, you know, I'm strong, I can do it. And yeah, you are strong, you are absolutely strong, but you don't need to hold it there. You have no obligation to hold it there. You can just rest. So honour what your breath is telling you. Take one more breath where you are. And then very slowly begin to find your next reset pose. So maybe very gently bringing the knees together, maybe curling up into a small little ball, maybe stretching the legs out long together. And when you're ready, coming into our next pose, which is going to be puppy pose. Again, you've got a lot of options here. So puppy pose, you're going to come into a tabletop position, and then you're keeping the hips nice and high, and you're walking the hands forward, lowering the chest down, maybe letting the chin fall to the mat or letting the forehead rest on the mat. And you can here, of course, bring some nice cushions, some blankets underneath the chest, and that will just alleviate a little bit of the pressure there. You can as well do a half puppy. So you bend one elbow in and just stretch out the one side, and that alleviates some of the intensity in this pose. So we're going to be here for 2 minutes. If this pose feels like, you know what, no, it's too much, you can always just come back to a child's pose and stay in your child's pose for 2 minutes as well. Child's pose, loads of stuff you can do to make a child's pose even more comfier. So you can plant some cushions behind the thighs. You can also bring your bolster or your props in front of your head, and then you can rest your forehead down and bring the arms beside the feet, and that can feel really supportive. Feel very cared for. If you're in your puppy pose, if it does begin to feel intense, please do prop yourself underneath the chest. And then also, if you've got your chin to the floor and you just feel like it's a bit too intense, pop your forehead onto the mat, and that will just release a little bit of the intensity. So about halfway through here, so if you're doing your half puppy, swap over to the other side. And breathe into that discomfort. So this pose can be really intense, but as long as it's not causing any sharp, sudden pains, as long as there's no pins and needles, if it's just a discomfort that you know is a stretch and it feels like it will be a good stretch, it just doesn't, you know, it feels very intense, then see if you can sit with that discomfort. We haven't got long left. Breathe deeply. And then when you're ready, take one more breath where you are and come into your reset pose. Maybe just taking it straight back to a child's pose, maybe coming onto your back. We are going to be on our backs for the next pose, so if you would like to make your way there, you're very welcome to. Noticing what you can notice. Okay, and when you're ready, if you're not already on your back, make your way onto your back for our final pose. We're going to come into a restorative bridge. So restorative bridge, you really ideally need either a bolster or you need something a bit tougher than a cushion. So yeah, I mean maybe like a sofa cushion or something like that. So the back of a sofa, that cushion would probably be quite good. So if you just see the bolster, it's quite firm, whereas in pillows are just sort of you just sink into them. So you need something a bit firmer, or ideally a book or a block. So on your restorative bridge, you're going to set up like you would a normal bridge, maybe slightly pigeon toe the feet, slightly turning the toes in, and maybe you're just sort of tickling the ankles with your fingers. And then you're going to lift your hips up, and then slide your prop just underneath your tailbone, your sacrum, in between the bum and the hips. And you'll know when it's in the right place because you'll feel supported. If you put it up too high or put it down too low, you'll just feel like you're going to collapse off it and it won't feel comfortable. Once you've got it in the right place, you'll feel supported. And then you can open your palms up to the sides. Just let the belly release here. If you want to go a bit higher, if you've got a block, you can always turn the block to its different heights. You can even take it to its highest height. But I would say only if you feel very open in your back, because that can be very intense. If you have a bolster or you've got kind of a tougher cushion, mat will be super juicy to stay here. Maybe see if you can notice your belly softening, your glutes softening. Notice the energy coming down. If you're struggling with your props and you feel like you don't have the right props to do this pose, what you can do instead is take your feet out a little bit wider and let your knees knock together. You can just stay here and that can feel really nice as well. Take one more breath where you are. And then very slowly, you're going to lift the hips and slide the prop from underneath you if you have one. And then we're going to give our knees a big squeeze and come into our final reset pose, our Shavasana. So opening up the legs towards the side of the mat, letting the feet fall out, letting the palms face up for receiving, maybe just tucking the chin a little bit on the mat, maybe stretching out the shoulders so they're really melting down onto the mat. Getting ourselves super comfy here. If you have any pain in your lower back, you can bring a bolster underneath your knees. Make sure the feet are still touching the floor and that might help alleviate some pain. If you do have a bolster as well, what can feel really nice is planting the bolster on your hips, and that weight can feel really lovely, a really nice little release for the back. You can get a little cushion behind the head, you can place an eye pillow across the face, put a blanket over you, just get super comfy, super cozy. Just got a few moments here. If you would like to stay longer in your Shavasana, then I would strongly encourage it. If you would like to finish the class with me, then begin to take some deep inhales and exhales. Begin to wiggle the fingers and the toes. Maybe rocking the head from side to side on the back of the mat. And when you're ready, bringing the knees into the chest, give yourself a big squeeze. Rolling over onto the right side now, your yang side. And no rush, but make your way up into a seated position, any seated position that you like, on your knees, cross-legged, legs out straight. Think about a nice tall spine. When you're ready, bring your hands into heart center and symbolically bow your head down towards your heart. Take a moment to appreciate yourself for doing this work, for showing up. It's really hard to slow down. It can be even more difficult than moving around and doing a really fast class. So thank yourself for being patient, for looking after your well-being. Thank you for, as always, for allowing me to guide you. Thank you, yogis.